Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to our first food security community call of 2023. So glad that you could all join us here today. I'm Anne Marie Hart Bookbinder, Food Security Programs Manager at the Montgomery County Food Council. And we have a really great call today. I'm really excited. We are going to be joined by County Councilmember Laurie-Anne Sayles. We are also going to have updates from the Montgomery County Food Council staff on some new policy opportunities to get engaged on. We're going to be joined by Laura Hale from the American Heart Association to give us an update on initiative to get free school meals for all students in Maryland. And we are also going to have an update from J.D. Robinson on SNAP policy. So before we get into all of that, I just wanted to take an opportunity at the start of the year. We have some returning and new Food Council members joining us this year. And I just wanted to give kind of both current and new an opportunity to say hello to this community. And I think it's also great for everyone on the call to kind of know who you are connected with, by being a part of Food Council work and knowing the types of, the folks and the organizations who are represented on the council to both, kind of improve your networking and get a sense of how we can kind of capitalize on all of the expertise in our area. So to kick things off, just because I know her schedule is a little time sensitive, I am going to ask Lynn Rubin-Traversa to say a quick hello, and I will name off some folks after that. So hi, Lynn.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. It's great to see everyone healthy and back in action after we all ate too much and maybe relaxed too much. I don't know. I am the statewide Healthy Food Systems Coordinator for Maryland SNAP-Ed, and it's my second year with the Food Council, and every moment with the Food Council, and it has been a joy in every way. It's just been a pleasure to meet so many people and to work together on all things food security, which of course is where I spend most of my day. So I hope everybody has a great start to their new year, and thanks for the opportunity to say hello.
Thanks so much, Lynn. I'm going to ask Mary Bennett, one of our new Food Council members, to say hello. Oh, Mary, sorry, you're on mute. Yep.
Yes, just saw that. Hi, I'm Mary Bennett, and I'm a retired social worker and a current community advocate. I'm connected with the Community Action Agency's Community Advocacy Institute, which trains low-income residents on how to advocate for the issues that are of importance to them in the community. I am also connected with the Manna Food Center's Advocacy Task Force and the Justice and Advocacy Council of Montgomery County, which is an independent Catholic organization that it deals with issues of social justice.
Thanks so much. I see that Angela Whitmall is on the call, and if she could, yep, there you go.
Hi, everybody. This is Angela from Manna Food Center. I am the Senior Director for Participant Support for Manna, which is our HR team with an emphasis on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this is my second year with the Food Council. Good to see everybody.
Thanks so much, Angela. I'm just scrolling through to see, I know there's a number of folks who are registered for today, but I'm not sure if they've all been able to join us just yet. If you are a Food Council member or a board member and you have joined us and somehow I just don't see you, please feel free to just unmute yourself. Oh, I see Amanda Nesher is joining us. She is also driving though, so I don't want to risk any injury, but she's waving there. And if it's safe for her to talk, I'm happy to hear her say hello. If not, I'll give her a little intro myself.
But I'm almost home, so I think I know the way, so it should be fine. Hi, everybody. I think you you do know me already, I used to work on staff at the Food Council. My name is Amanda Nesher. I am currently going into my second term, I think, as a council member, and also the liaison to the advocacy and policy committee at the Food Council. So lovely to see you all again. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a good holiday.
Thanks, Amanda. Elisa Gonzalez, would you mind saying hello and introducing yourself?
Hello, Anne-Marie. What a nice surprise. Hello, everyone. I'm Elisa Gonzalez. I am, I think, a second year or third year council member and also the board secretary. And on my day job, I am an associate at Community Science, which is a local research and evaluation firm. So very nice to see you all.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Again, I'm flipping through. Don't think I have missed anyone who hasn't joined yet, but again, if you are a Food Council member or a board member and I just have missed you, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the food security community. I'll give it a moment of pause there for a second while we wait there. Okay, I think we're, oh, Matilda?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Matilda. I'm a board member of the Food Security Advisory Board. I'm sorry I was late. I was finding it difficult because the icon of Zoom have changed. I don't know, there's something wrong. I don't know. I think they have upgraded it, so I was finding it difficult to join. But I'm here with you all today. Nice meeting you all and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much for joining us, Matilda, from our Food Security Community Advisory Board. And yes, new year, new updates, right? We never know what's going to happen when we're returning on our systems at the start of the year. Thank you so much. I am going to turn things over to Michelle Caruso, who has an update on some new ways to engage with the Food Council's policy initiatives. And I think this is a really great way to kick off our call because most everything else that we are discussing today really involves policy and advocacy. So just a great kickoff for the new year. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all. Happy New Year. Happy 2023. You know, just like a lot of organizations, as the Food Council has entered a new year, we've been reevaluating the way that we convene folks and the structures in which we use our time together. And what we noticed in 2022 was that in our organization, as well as a lot of our partners, became more and more engaged in food system advocacy. So the Food Council came up with our 4 policy priorities that we really tried to dive into and work on specifically. We also kept a 2022 policy tracker, and I'll be dropping all of these into the chat after I'm done talking. So no worries on remembering all of this. But you know, we really got more and more of the community engaged around these issue areas, and we kept hearing positive feedback from folks about what we were sharing and the transparency that we were, you know, looking to share our work in the policy realm, as well as bring people along with us on our journey as we learned and grew in that work. So as a continuation of that effort in 2023, we are launching a food system advocacy community call. So, you know, based on this really excellent model of the food security community call, we're hoping to convene the community around opportunities for food system advocacy. So this will be monthly. These calls will typically be 1 hour in length at 1 p.m. It's going to be the first call on Tuesday, January 24th, and I'll be dropping a link to register into the chat. So, you know, we're really excited to host these calls, as well as 3 trainings over the course of the year. Those trainings will be a little bit longer than the typical call, but we'll have a training around local advocacy that will be focused on specifically local government budget advocacy. We'll be having a training on state advocacy, likely in the fall, and federal advocacy in the summer. So the local training will happen first this spring. More information to come on all of that. And just another quick highlight, and again, I'll be dropping these things in the chat, but you know, you can follow along with us as we take positions on different advocacy issue areas and specific bills and policy positions. The Food Council has a pretty formal process for doing that. And you can actually request for that we take a position on your issue area as well. We convene a policy committee that makes decisions. These are folks from our board and from our Food Council that have a wide variety of expertise across the food system and across community-based issues to help us determine if we want to take a position on an issue and then what that position is. So thanks, Anne Marie. Just another plug. Our first meeting is going to be January 24th, Tuesday at 1 p.m. for 1 hour. And I hope to see a lot of you there. And there'll be a bunch of things going into the chat momentarily. Thanks so much, Anne Marie.
Thanks, Michelle. And as usual, anything that's being shared in the chat, any of the other resources that are shared on the call today will, of course, be sent out to you in our follow-up resource email by tomorrow. So don't worry if you miss anything or, kind of want a connection point, we will make sure to provide that. I did see a few additional Food Council members join our call, and apologies to put you on the spot, but we are just taking this opportunity to allow you to introduce yourselves to our food security community, because as you know, one of the strongest aspects, of the food security community is our ability to network and to leverage partnerships. And so we just want to make sure that everyone here is familiar with the members of the Food Council, in case those are relationships that benefit you, for anything that you are working on, that level of engagement. So I see Kelly Dorden has joined us. So if you just want to take a moment and introduce yourself, Kelly.
Yes, thanks so much, Anne Marie. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Dorden, and I'm a continuing Food Council member going into my 3rd year as a Food Council member. And I've also been the co-chair of the Food Council's Environmental Impact Working Group for the past couple of years. And my interest in food waste and composting and food recycling brought me to the Environmental Impact Working Group, but our priorities have expanded quite a bit and overlap, and I've spoken with many of you. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. I also see that Gabby Massey has joined us. So Gabby, if you're available to say hello and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Anne Marie. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. It's nice to see all of you. So my name is Gabby Massey. I've been 1 year with the Food Council, and I am the manager for the Maryland region at Capital Area Food Bank. I work with many of food assistance organizations, and happy to connect at any time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gabby. If there are any other Food Council members who have joined that I've missed, again, feel free to just raise your hand or unmute yourself and introduce yourself. And if not, we will move on to our next agenda item. All right. With that, moving along, I'm going to introduce Laura Hale, the Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association. Thanks so much for joining us today, Laura.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne Marie, and thank you all so much for having me on today and for your time. Again, my name is Laura Hale. I work with the American Heart Association, and I'm really excited for what session is looking like this year. This year, we'll be introducing legislation. This is a second round for this legislation to look at healthy school meals for all. So making sure that every child in the state of Maryland will get free breakfast and free lunch if their school participates in the school breakfast and lunch program. Really excited about this legislation. There was legislation put in last year and unfortunately didn't move. And so this year we're pushing really hard. We have Delegate Resnick again coming back as our bill sponsor in the House. And new for us this year, as our previous sponsor retired, we will have Senator Guy Gazzone, who is the chair of Budget and Tax, as our bill sponsor in the Senate. Really excited to have him as sponsor. That is a very, very good, strong sponsor for us to put forward this legislation. This legislation is still in a very draft form. It's two bill drafting, but we don't have a final form where I can share it with you all quite yet. But the general highlights of this bill is that this legislation will go into effect. Kids get free breakfast and free lunch as part of that. There is not a mandate to take on CEP. I know there has been concerns about that in the past, it is still free for schools to do, but there is openness and flexibility for schools to make decisions around that. But at the end of the day, we'll see free breakfast and free lunch for kids throughout the state, and so that we can return to where we had during the pandemic, where kids had free breakfast and free lunch. Recognizing that that was a complicated thing to do at the last minute, this will give us a little more build in as we build forward from once the legislation passes. But overall, what I would like and need from you all is help to get this done. We have a standing coalition that we are becoming more formal in the current moments. It's a little fluid, but basically the more the merrier. To join, I will put out my email address, is how we're kind of coalescing at the moment. We'll have a communications committee we're building out, but really what I need is your voices and your help and support to get this done. It's going to be a big lift because, as we well know from last year's efforts, there's a very large fiscal note attached to this one. But we have positive hope from both having the chair of budget and tax and general support from our conversations with Chair Atterbury, who's where the legislation will go in the House, that there's general positive support for this bill, but the fiscal note will be a big overcome. With that, any questions that I can answer for the larger group? Yes, go ahead.
Serge, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, Laura, and thank you for the work that you're doing on our behalf in Annapolis. I'm the Community Engagement and Partnerships Director for Oak Chapel United Methodist Church's Food Hub in Silver Spring. My question is this. You did note that the fiscal note is going to be very vital to the success, or maybe even failure, but we all hope for success for this bill. Would eligibility based upon income also be a determinant for this bill? Because my concern is you might have a lot of wealthy families in the state of Maryland who might not necessarily be fiscally eligible for it. And you want to try to really target the money and even opportunity to those who would definitely need it, which would be people further down the economic strata. No big deal if it's available to all, because every child should be able to eat. And thank you very much.
Of course, thank you. So this legislation is currently set up to do that next step of making it for every child, regardless of income. We know the state has already taken kind of some of those intermediate steps with with covering the cost of reduced price students, so that there's no reduced price category. It's all free or paid at this point. And so I really see this as the next step to that, to making sure that every kid and being an equalizer, if you will, for students of need, especially for those falling through the cracks on this one.
Serge, I'll add too, just from what we know happening in Montgomery County Public Schools Food and Nutrition Services is fully aware, from their data over the past couple of years, even when school lunch was provided free to all students, obviously not all students took advantage of the meals. And so I think, Montgomery County, like many other school districts, as they would work with the state to report that information, they're already familiar of the fact that it's not going to be, the true cost of providing a meal to every single student every single day, because there's just not going to be that level of utilization. So
was there like a language barrier or communications factor in why the students did not necessarily take advantage, or even the families specifically take advantage of the opportunity for free meals?
I think for the most part last year, during COVID, it may be something of what you said, that there were, a number of families who, had the financial ability to provide their students with, their children with lunch to bring every day, and that was their preference to do so. I don't know if over that time, if there was really, I think by time the 2 years were up, there had been a pretty solid communication within MCPS that it was available to everyone. But I do know, just as a parent, who has children in the school system myself, I know initially when my high school student went back, he actually had a hard time accessing lunch because there were so many, kids now trying to take it. So there may have been some internal, issues at the start of that rollout to handle that capacity that may have made it a challenge for some kids to participate. But I think, as time went on, those who wanted to access it, probably could.
Things evened out.
Yeah.
It did. And I've also heard from talking to, and this is anecdotal information at this point. I don't have like strict numbers on this, that from some of the school nutritionists that they were saying that they're already seeing some decreases from those kids falling through the gaps, falling between the gaps, where we had the kids who really needed it, who were right at that cusp, and are no longer getting any kind of food because we no longer have this program in place. And so this will hopefully help to rectify that. Michelle, and then Julia.
Sure. I was just wondering, Laura, and thanks so much for your work on this. And we're excited to participate in it with you. But I was wondering if you could share some lessons learned from other states, because, last year, this was more of a nascent idea, but between last year and this year, several states have passed similar legislation and started implementing it. So does that benefit the campaign this year, in your opinion?
I really think it does. Thanks, Michelle, for the question. Last year when this was put forward, it was like, look, we had this during the pandemic and we want to continue this. But we didn't have the large group of other states that have also taken this up in the meantime. So since last session and now, we have Maine, we have Massachusetts has funded it. It's not formally in their code, but I talked to my counterpart up there. It's coming in their code. It's just in the budget for their cycle. We see Colorado passed it by ballot during the last election. California has passed it. New Mexico has put forward some changes as well. So we're really seeing a wave of other states looking at this. And we've got other states who are considering this legislation at the same time. A long list of states that are all considering this. And I think that this really helps us to be able to point and say, look, not only did we see this during the pandemic and the difference that it made for kids during that period of time, there's some data out of Hopkins that I was reading of having these school lunches offered as a protective factor for families that we're seeing here in the short term, but also looking at all of these other states, they're seeing positives even in early term data. This is not long term, but early stuff. It makes logical sense, but it really does bear out as well for all of us to see the benefits of what it means for children and for families when they have free school lunch, no matter what the family income level is, but having that security for all students, especially for those that their families, or for whatever reason, we all know, we all work in this areas of, there's a lot of barriers that people come up with that are in front of people of why it can be difficult to fill out forms or to want to put forward that information. But when it's all on the table, everyone has the opportunity to eat and to be able to learn in that way. That I wanted to turn, Julia, I think you wanted to chime in, and then I see Clara, if I'm saying that incorrectly, sorry.
Yeah, I had less of a question, more of a comment. I just wanted to lift up in terms of, directing the funds to, all students across the state instead of just targeting certain, income levels or certain schools. I think we've seen, over the pandemic, but even beforehand, like when Baltimore City used CEP to provide meals to all of their students, we really saw a decrease in stigma and an increase in participation among the students who are already eligible for free and reduced price meals. So it's not just cost that is a barrier to students and families from accessing these meals. A lot of times it is the stigma associated with them. And so we see when all kids have equal access and are able to go through that lunch line and not be identified for their income level, we see an uptick in participation across all income levels. So it's really a benefit that we're hoping to get in Maryland across the board.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Julia. completely agree.
Carla?
Carla, sorry. That's great.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I think it plays a real important part if we market it right. If we market it and let people know that it's not for people. A lot of times people think because they do make a certain amount of money or they have the means that they don't want to take from somebody else. And so if we market it as more of, if a child is eating and we know that they're eating, they're going to test, their test grades are going to be good. Their, mind will function better and not focus so much on the stigma of free and reduce, but getting the word out that it helps get better test scores. So if like the food hubs and the guidance counselors, if they share with the parents at the PTA meetings that it's not getting free lunch, it's making sure that they eat lunch or eat breakfast so that they can perform well in school and get good grade outcomes.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Thanks so much, Laura, for presenting on this today. And this is, definitely something that will be continued to be followed by the Food Council, and particularly in Michelle's policy calls moving forward. And we'll also keep you updated here as Laura has more information to share kind of once communications materials are produced and things that we can all help roll out to share with communities and get behind this potential legislation. So thank you so much for sharing that. We have about 2 more minutes before we start our conversation with County Council member Laurie-Anne Sayles. And in that time, I did notice the last 2 Food Council or board or council members join us. So I just wanted to give them a quick opportunity to introduce themselves. Apologies to put you on the spot. But Daniela Hurtado, one of our new Food Council members, if you are able to unmute yourself and just say hello and introduce yourself to the community, I think we'd really appreciate, they'd appreciate learning more about you and your work. Give that a second, and if not, I did also see that we were joined by Carmen Poston Travis. So Carmen, if you're able to unmute and say hello.
Certainly, I'm so excited about this topic. And I am Carmen Poston Farmer Travis on the board of directors of the Food Council, and just excited about what I've heard thus far and how it will benefit our community residents, our students, and their families.
Thank you. Oh, and I also noticed that Monica Goldberg is with us now as well. Hi, Monica.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Goldberg. I am a Food Council member, new this year. I also work for Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services as the program manager for the navigation team that helps people connect with different services, whether they be county, community, or state benefits.
Thank you so much. And this is an amazing feat of timing. It is exactly 1:30. And I think that I will double check with Victoria, but I think we have been joined by County Council member Laurie-Anne Sayles. Just check in my. She's there.
Yeah, she's on.
Hello.
Oh.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much. I'll do a quick intro, although I feel like it's hardly necessary, but thank you so much for joining us. This is Montgomery County Council member Laurie-Anne Sayles. She serves as one of the 4 at-large council members, and she serves on both the Economic Development and the Health and Human Services committees, which is a perfect overlap in functions for the Montgomery County Food Council, and all the different ways that we are looking to help establish, you know, a more equitable food system in the county. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm just going to turn the floor over to you to kind of share some thoughts, and then we will move into some questions from our community.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for convening this introductory meeting. I'm really happy to be here with you all to share a bit of background about my platform, which was a SMART agenda, looking at strengthening our commitment to education from cradle to career and beyond. I'm a firm believer in ensuring pathways to self-sufficiency through workforce development and ensuring that our residents have opportunities to graduate college and career ready. Also making a living in our county more affordable. The people that want to call our county home should be able to access affordable housing and pathways to home ownership, because those are the ways that we, the quickest ways to close the racial wealth gap and also build equity for families as well. Our next topic has to do with food insecurity, and I met with Heather early on in our campaign efforts to talk about what the county was doing with regards to advancing local food production in our ag reserve. The Farm to Food Bank initiative helped to feed residents fresh foods. A few of our farmers are already working with local restaurants and businesses to feed, to do the farm to table. And so how can we maximize and leverage the resources that we have here, which is the largest ag reserve in the nation, and realize local food production here. And so I'm looking forward to doing that with the, as a member of the Economic Development Committee, and working with our food producers as well. And, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. So, revitalizing our economy is key. I've been hearing for years how we are behind the region, with Virginia really taking the lead on attracting and retaining and growing businesses. And when I first moved here, that wasn't the case. It was our county leading the way on economic development. And so I'm really pleased that we now have a committee dedicated to finding ways to attract, retain, and grow businesses, and also to diversify the industries that are here in Montgomery County. I think when we had the pandemic, a lot of emphasis was placed on technology and how we use technology to conduct business. And so we need to ensure our workforce is also prepared to take on those jobs if we want businesses to move here. And then last but not least, tackling climate change through a variety of efforts. We have the county's climate action plan that we're going to have to implement and create regulations around how that system is going to be regulated. The Food Council was really vocal when the solar industry was proposing putting solar panels in the ag reserve, and we actually hosted a joint meeting with some of the advocates, the council members, and industry leaders to see if there was a viable pathway forward to even think about something like that in the ag reserve, and if not there, then other places where we can do that. Also ensuring that our residents have access to, healthy foods, and they can afford to navigate our community, whether it's through subsidies for bus fare or, identifying better places for the flash bus to, transport our residents to those business centers. And so that's a bit about my agenda. I'm very familiar with the Food Council. Not as familiar with all of the incredible partners that have joined the meeting here. I know this is a regularly occurring meeting. And so I'm always hearing from new constituencies when I attend these meetings. And so looking forward to, hearing your questions. As you mentioned, Anne Marie, I am going to be a member of the Health and Human Services Committee and the Economic Development Committee. So any ideas you have around those two committees, and then all of the committees are going to eventually come before the full council. And so whether it's, I heard the first speaker talking about, free lunch service. I was getting emails, requesting people to adopt a family to pay off the lunch bills for students who couldn't have, who are in arrears. And I know what it feels like as a child to have to get the free meal or to have to get the cheese sandwich because you can't afford the lunch ticket. Your parents didn't have time to get the forms in. And so, I know what sort of trauma that can cause for a child for that to happen on a regularly occurring basis. And so the more we can, show compassion and dignity in accessing such, an accessible resource, it just boggles my mind that we were able to, have free lunch year round during the pandemic, but we never explored ways to sustainably continue those efforts. And so looking forward to finding out ways that we can support a sustainable way to keep our children fed and eliminate food insecurity overall in our county. And I think these two committees are best positioned to do that. So thank you again, and looking forward to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. I am on the lookout, so please feel free to either raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask, or feel free to put it in the chat, and I'm happy to read it for you. And while I give our community, a few seconds to kind of pull their thoughts together, I will just kick off a question, just because we just, talked about advocacy and, kind of food council advocacy moving forward, and this legislation now, what are ways that, our members of our food security community, how do you recommend that they engage with your office, with the offices of other members of county council? How important really is the community voice in county council activities?
It's so crucial. I mean, in a county of 1.1 million, you can imagine the sort of budget requests that, come into each of our offices, and they're not always copying every single council member. Sometimes they're only sending it to the people who are on those particular committees. And so to get an outline of any legislative priorities, any positions, and if you're sending something in, to have each of the partners included on these calls to also send in a personalized letter about what, these resources mean to the populations that you serve. I truly believe that nonprofits are the fourth arm of government. And so we have to be working in close partnership to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our residents. And so your input really helps put the narrative, makes it more realistic, versus just having the numbers that we're going to see in a line item when there's a request. And so translating into what that means, if we were able to provide free meals for our students, how many students are we really impacting, and families are we relieving a burden of ensuring that our students are ready to learn because they have a healthy meal, that their parents aren't having to worry about, and, bills that are accruing because of, students can't pay for lunch. I don't want to see none of our children in Montgomery County. There's no reason why any student should be saddled with any debt, and we need to find a way to forgive all of those debts, whether it's focusing on our Title I students first, or better educating our families about the opportunities for, free or reduced meals. So we just need better specifics so we can have targeted efforts to create policies that will help the largest amount of people in the quickest way possible.
Thank you. Anyone have a question that they would like to share with Councilmember Sayles?
I have a question.
Please.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that was my echo. I thought I heard someone else speaking. This is Carmen. Is someone else speaking? My apologies.
Oh, no, it's
Carmen,
you
you're
have the
good
floor.
Okay, excellent. I'd like also for us to think about concentrating our efforts as well in the community college space. We know that because we have open access, we have the tendency to get persons from all socioeconomic backgrounds, but not just people with socioeconomic backgrounds. Food insecurity also is a result of a lot of things, mental health challenges, homelessness, substance use, neglect, a lot of things that are variables. And so I'd like for us to consider what efforts we could put toward our students at the community college with having access to food as well. As most of you all know, and I think we have a colleague on the call here from MC within our Montgomery College community space, within our health and wellness program. One of our main targets is food insecurity. And while food insecurity is not a phenomenon with students in higher education, as you can imagine, it's more prevalent at the 2-year college level. So not particularly thinking about any particular initiatives, but if you could keep the community college students at the forefront also of your mind when you're thinking about food initiatives and addressing food insecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer. That was a really great point that you brought up, because right around the holidays, my team and myself, we actually visited Montgomery College in Rockville, and we got to meet the members of the Capital Area Food Bank that hosts the weekly food distributions at Montgomery College campuses. And so trying to find more sustainable ways to feed our residents in a more dignified way than having them go through a bread line. We were able to provide SNAP benefits to residents so they could shop with dignity and still take care of their families. We have an abundance of food, but we lack in our pathways for residents to access those resources. And so I'm not sure if it's something that we need to do to work with our federal partners to either extend the funding, figure out ways to reevaluate the application for those accessing SNAP benefits, and see, I'm already trying to assess how the funding to address food insecurity has, what's happened during the pandemic, ways that we can improve how that money was spent, and, what's the pathway forward to really ensure that our residents are accessing the abundance of food resources that we do have. It's not just MANA, but there are so many providers now in our network. And so as people are losing those benefits, how are we responding to that need, and where are we, ensuring that residents can access this information immediately? We are at a really critical time in our county's history with the resources, they're drying up, and we haven't made the transition to find out how we're going to sustain these programs after this funding ends. And so, you know, I'm glad that we have the partners that we do at the federal, the state, and the local level. We're all, I think, dedicated to finding more sustainable ways. And so I think that will be one of the asks that we make at the state level as we are going through the 90-day session. And so that's what I'll make sure that our committee can do. Looks like Carla.
I'm going to go to Carla in just one second, but I did get a question sent to me personally in the chat that I want to make sure, because I also realized we didn't provide all the clarification on this during Laura's presentation about school meals.
Yes.
So some questions had come in as to why we were able to do, why in the county there was able to be free school meals during the pandemic. That, for those of you who are unaware, that came through federal funding. Those were USDA waivers that allowed that to happen, and other flexibilities in the meal program. And that was all through ARPA funding. So I think that that's, you know, important to recognize that that was not something that the county was paying for. But again, Councilmember Sayles, you know, astutely pointed out that, you know, we weren't really prepared for that transition, right? To how could that continue? And that is a good connection point for our soon to be speaker, JJ Robinson. Is, as many of you probably know, the SNAP emergency allotments are going to be going away. And that is official now. That was passed in the omnibus. And so we know that we have a big cliff coming to us as well. So I think that all kind of fits in this theme that, you know, and I'll let Councilmember Sayles speak to that, but, you know, about that continuity, you know, the fact that many of these, you know, silver linings of COVID are now kind of going away, and how do we prepare for that? So I'm sorry, I just wanted to provide that clarification. If there's anything else you wanted to say on that, feel free, and then we can switch over to Carla's question.
Definitely. So the last thing I'll mention about this, you know, we had a task force on homelessness, but we're realizing that we need a more holistic approach. And so I've requested a study on poverty in general. If we're going to eradicate poverty and the you know, pre-existing conditions that cause poverty, we need to look at all of the elements, including the mental health and housing insecurity, workforce preparedness of our residents experiencing homelessness, and figure out a more strategic way to put them on a path to self-sufficiency so that hunger becomes the least of their worries. And so, yeah, we cannot. And it's disappointing that we're coming to a close of this, you know, this pandemic, and we don't have anything in place to sustain food insecurity for our residents, because the food distributions are not going to, it's just not sustainable, and it's unfair to our residents. I would rather $22 million be allocated, you know, appropriately to the families who need it to buy these resources on their own. And so trying to find out better ways to, you know, take care of our residents with dignity. So.
Carla, thank you for your patience. Please share your question.
No problem. I want to thank Councilmember Sayles for all your work and your colleagues for what you all are doing for that. My question is, have you all considered having a meeting with all of the local farmers and seeing if you all can provide them with funding to maybe adopt different food hubs and food distributions? And then that way you could probably encompass the federal level, because I'm the executive director for MAFRAC, and we are trying to do, we started a pilot program, which is now up and running, where we're connecting stakeholders with local farmers and trying to, build more of a collaboration partnership with the local farmers to be able to help not just provide food, but healthy food.
Yes, no, great point. We met briefly with the Maryland Farm Bureau right before the Christmas holidays, and I do have a meeting set up with our farmers, the members of the Ag Reserve, to talk about these initiatives. I mean, right now it's the capacity. They don't have the funding to sustain an entire, like even our school system, let alone our government buildings. One of the delegates in Annapolis, Delegate Charkoudian, actually passed legislation last year to mandate state government to utilize local farmers in their procurement efforts. And so even coming up with a bill like that, but we have to make sure that our farmers have the resources they need. And so working with them to assess what those resources are, and then working with them to actually, advocate at the federal and state level to ensure we can bring those resources back to the county. If we don't have the infrastructure to sustain this, all of our efforts will, have failed within the year of providing this. We need to make sure that they can regularly provide these resources.
One of the things that they said they were running into was if they know ahead of time what it is that you would like, they can plan for that. And just attending several of meetings with some of the local farmers, I wasn't aware that certain things you can't grow. Like say if you grow greens in one soil this year, you can't grow it next year. So if you get what you would like to see, they could better build their capacity to help us better on that. That was one of their downsides that they said they were never able to get from people.
Yeah, I think those are, good questions for us to delve deeper into during that meeting to find out what they need from us to, have the capacity to feed our residents over a sustained period of time. They were able to do it on a very small scale during the pandemic, but surely not the needs where we can become dependent upon them at this time. And so, the county executive has already made efforts with some of our wineries to create, even a great processing facility in the county so that they're not delaying their processing times. And so, a lot of our farmers have commodities that they're growing for the government. And so how can they, switch to, a food source that, as you said, is really cyclical. The nutrients have to be restored in the soil for them to, continually grow these crops that we become dependent upon. And so how can we, support our ag reserve to, take on that responsibility? And I believe it's possible, but how that happens and everything that they need to realize that is going to take some time. And so I'm looking forward to having that discussion, identifying the ways that we can support and advocate to ensure that this is, a collective way forward that everyone's on board for.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who wanted to share a question? I don't see any in the chat. Again, I'm happy to lob another one up, but I don't want to take away from anyone else's on the call's time, but you can get started. Councilmember Sayles, for those of us who aren't as familiar with the the policy process at the council level. Can you give a little bit of an understanding of what the role, say, like on Health and Human Services on the committee, what's that committee's role in developing policy for the county?
I mean, it's really trying to make our Department of Health and Human Services work more effectively for our residents. It's, making it easier for people to apply for programs, access these programs, streamlining the process. We've worked on everything from the affordability of the bus fares to making sure that our schools have more mental health providers, exploring opportunities for student loan forgiveness for people who are pursuing degrees in social services, trying to stabilize the tax code for people who are eligible for the earned income tax credit. The county has a matching fund that will match whatever is received at the state level. It was at 80% during more challenging times. It's now at a full 100%. So if you're eligible at the state, you'll automatically get a matching fund, here in the county. And so our goal is to create policies that make it easier for residents to live healthier lives. And that just encompasses a lot of different areas, and so we get our policy ideas and recommendations from organizations just like you, whether it's about rental stabilization, mental health resources, increasing the minimum wage, all of those are birthed out of the Health and Human Services category. We just had our World AIDS Day celebration. And so people were asking about, more access to healthcare benefits. How can we create healthier communities? How can we work with our businesses, with our planners to build healthier communities? And so we make recommendations, policy recommendations, to ensure that, those things are central to the work that we do. And we're constantly evaluating the work that does happen, what's been happening. The Office of Legislative Oversight, if you're not familiar with their office, they have research studies that go back, I believe, 20 years, looking at various topics. You can put in any keyword and identify any areas for, how they've really leveraged that department. And I mean, there's any number of opportunities for us to make better policy around food insecurity in this county. And, even about the, free meals at schools. I think that's an excellent place to start, because I hate thinking about our students, any student in our county, not being able to have a meal because of their resources. And so I'll get my ideas and recommendations from you. I'll get my marching orders from you. And, if I'm having any trouble here at the council, getting my colleagues to support the services that are necessary for our residents to succeed, I'll be calling on you again to send in a letter of support to, put that personal touch on why this is so important for the communities that we serve. And so, that's going to be the goal that we will focus on for our committee assignments.
If you do have time for one more question, I did just get one in the chat, someone who is having some microphone issues. So they asked me, in relation to newcomers, the question is, how can we navigate that as it has increased our numbers for food distributions at our sites? Are there provisions for them? That's
a good question. When new residents come to the county, we're supposed to be like the one-stop shop to assess all of the areas, whether it's healthcare, housing, education, translation. You know, we offer a variety of resources and services to help people through those transitioning periods. And so if there are any residents who, you know, may have some pain points at any of those junctures, you know, it's important to communicate that to our office so that we can investigate. But, you know, a lot of the families that, you know, are currently served through the food distribution efforts have been referred to other resources through the partner network that we have here at the county. So yeah, please let our office know if you have any residents that are having trouble, and we will be sure to follow up.
Yeah, I think they did follow up, especially in regards to those that are being bussed in currently, since they have no papers. Undocumented was a concern.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good to know. So yeah, we're trying to get more information about the numbers and hope to be able to invite, you know, the Food Council and the partners to any briefings that we have pertaining to food insecurity in the county and ways that we can work together to eliminate food insecurity once and for all.
Thank you so much for your time, for your attention today, Councilmember Sayles. It was a pleasure to have you. And again, we look forward to working more closely with you and your office staff on these issues in the future. And I'll just tell my audience, if they have any other questions that kind of come to them after they've had a chance to think this through, feel free to send them to me and I will share them with Councilmember Sayles' office, and we will get you your answers. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, it's so good to see everyone. I see a few familiar faces, my former colleague from the Community Action Agency, and I'm sure there are many others, but I just want to thank you all for the work that you do for our most vulnerable populations, and want you to know that you have a partner and a fierce advocate that's going to help you realize the goals that you have set forth. And we're here as a resource. And Victoria, I'm so glad to have her on our team. We are going to be vigilant in making things better in this area. So thank you for keeping us informed and for making us a part of your collective. So
thanks so much.
All right.
Okay, I will turn things over now to our good friend JD Robinson from Maryland Hunger Solutions to give us the latest on all things SNAP and maybe a little bit of a sense of the upcoming state legislative session. So thanks so much for joining us, JD.
Yeah, thank you, Anne Marie. Yeah, so today I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. And I think first and foremost, we need to talk about the ending of emergency allotments. Also, hi, everyone. JD Robinson. I'm the program coordinator for SNAP at Maryland Hunger Solutions. So as mentioned earlier on the call today, and as I'm sure many of you have already heard, emergency allotments, which is the ability for SNAP benefits to be boosted to the maximum amount for the household size, or for households already receiving the maximum amount, be given an additional $95 a month. That is going to be ending as of this year, either at the end of February or at the end of March. Technically, federally speaking, they end at the end of February. However, the state can request a grace month, which would then extend them into March. And we are in talks with our state agency at DHS to see if that is indeed a possibility for Maryland. And so with that comes the benefit cliff that we've all been talking about, mentioning a lot in calls leading up to this moment, and now is unfortunately going to become a reality. This comes with a couple of opportunities for outreach and what we can do to contact our communities that we work with that are on SNAP, and to ensure that this cliff isn't as severe as it possibly could be. And a lot of that comes down to how benefits are calculated and how we can ensure that through those calculations, households are receiving the correct benefit amount. I'm not going to go into the full details on calculations, as I simply don't have the time for that today, and it's a little murky, but essentially the biggest part of what you can do for folks is to make sure they're claiming their appropriate deductions. And there's three big ones for households. It's housing and utility costs. So rent, utilities, anything used to heat or cool the home, all of those need to be reported accurately and up to date with what is currently being paid by the household. The second big one, which often can go unreported, especially for households that are mixed status, is childcare expenses. Childcare can get families a really, really big deduction if it allows another family member in that SNAP household to go to work or to attend school. That is the only requirement for a childcare deduction to be viable. It doesn't need to be through a daycare. It doesn't need to be through a childcare facility. If someone in the household is taking any children to a family member's house, a friend's house, and they are paying that person to look after them, that's an allowable expense and can claim a major deduction to income, boosting the SNAP benefit for that household. And then last but definitely not least is for particularly older adults or any household that has a disabled family member, which is medical deductions. And this is going to be monthly, recurring, out-of-pocket medical expenses that are $35 a month or more. It's a weird number to hit, but basically once a household achieves that expense, reports it accurately, again, another major deduction can be placed against the household's income. And we know that when emergency allotments come down, the households that are probably going to get hit the hardest with the biggest decrease in benefits are going to be older adults. They usually have higher incomes, which usually means typically a lower minimum benefit or just lower SNAP benefit overall, but claiming that medical deduction and claiming an accurate housing and utility deduction can be really, really helpful in making sure that A, they stay eligible, and B, they get the SNAP benefit amount that they're supposed to. Now, the way to help direct folks to do this is to get them to an organization like ourselves or the Montgomery County Food Council and file what's called a change report. This is essentially a way for a household to self-declare any changes that have occurred to their household size, their income, or their expenses. Make sure all three of those things are accurate. Do them before emergency allotments come down. That way, by the time that form has been processed, everything's ready and set to go before we start to see this decrease in benefits that's going to come with emergency allotments. And a couple of things I just like to clarify with this is that this isn't the end of the public health emergency. That is going to continue. And with it comes a lot of the flexibilities that are still in place until that is over, including the ABOD waiver. So able-bodied adults without dependents are still able to get their benefits without fulfilling the work requirement. College student eligibility still remains slightly expanded based on the previous eligibility requirements that the administration has put into place. And state-specific waivers are still claimable as well. Now, many of you know that over the course of 2022, Maryland lost a lot of those waivers, including interview flexibility, recertification flexibility. However, until the public health emergency is over, the state can still claim those up to a 12-month period. So we are going to be pushing the state agency to get those waivers, especially in light of emergency allotments coming down. A lot of households will just need as many flexibilities as possible to get onto the program, maintain those benefits throughout. And as the state kind of continues to transition, just having those flexibilities in place is going to help recipients and caseworkers alike. And again, we can get it for a full 12 months. It's just something that we can, until the PHE is over, it goes beyond that. And so this is something that we're really, really hoping to get for folks just across the board. And then last but not least is going to be how the community is going to be notified. We know that DHS is likely going to be sending out letters to the entirety of the SNAP caseload. We saw this actually somewhat in practice in October of 2021 when we had a brief scare, 2021, when we had a brief scare of these coming down after the state emergency declaration was coming to a close. And we are hoping that DHS crafts these in a very understandable way, because we've just recently had many COLA adjustments. We had a COLA adjustment in October. We had a COLA adjustment for Social Security beneficiaries this month. a lot of ups and downs are going to be happening, and this is going to be kind of the definitive, this is what your benefit's going to be. That letter is sometimes not entirely accurate. We did see in October of last time we were about to lose EAs that older adult households that are 62 years of age and older were reported to get the minimum benefit of $22. That's not true in Maryland. Here in Maryland, older adults get at least $40 a month. That's a state supplemented minimum. And so we're hoping that DHS is able to make those adjustments accordingly for those households, because that's a large drop and we want to make sure that those are accurate. And so we will be having updated communications with DHS, hopefully, and also with all of you. We're hoping to release some social media shareable posts, as well as just general things to put on websites, just to let folks know as ahead of time as possible that these benefits are going to be decreasing pretty severely for a lot of households, and just making sure that folks are ready for it, they understand what's going on in a clear fashion, and if they are able to, update their information as needed to make sure they're getting the correct benefit amount. So moving on, I'll actually take questions now in regards to that before I talk about legislative stuff.
Actually, I did have one, JD, if you don't mind, and I'm thinking of this as something when someone goes to apply it, that it comes to their mind. So hopefully this is helpful to folks. Proof of childcare expenses. What is considered acceptable? Because I'm envisioning scenarios where someone is paying cash to a friend or a family member, and possibly there may be issues that maybe the person that is getting paid in cash may not be sharing that information. How do families work around that issue?
So what we have used in the past is a letter. Simply a letter of agreement between the head of household that is paying for the childcare and the person providing the childcare. All the person providing the childcare needs to put on that letter is their name and their phone number. The level of information never goes as deep as, is this person paying taxes, or is this person a citizen? So that has been a big concern for, again, a lot of folks in the immigrant and mixed status community, is that while they themselves may not be getting benefits, but they're getting it for their kids, to whom they're paying for childcare, the person they're paying for the childcare may also not be documented, what have you. The fears there, in a similar way for how SNAP benefits can't be used against citizenship claims, the same thing can be said for designating someone as providing childcare and paying that person. I know that's not a very easy thing to communicate effectively, and I know there's still a ton of fear around the program overall, but that, again, is a huge place where folks can claim that deduction and get, again, their appropriate benefit amount.
Thank you, JD.
Of course. Yeah, I know we're coming up on time in 5 minutes, but yes, any other questions on
We've got plenty of time,
allotments?
JD. We've got plenty of time.
Yeah, so the question in the chat in preparation, do they need to do anything? So as far as the change is concerned, nothing is done, so to speak. However, if they are reporting and renewing their expenses, that, like I said, that needs to be done through a change report. For families that have an account and have done this on their own in MD Think, there's a button on the website that says report a change. They just put in their information again, and as per usual with any sort of applications or any sort of renewal processes, documents are the name of the game. They need to be providing up-to-date and as recent bills, lease agreements, anything that proves that they are indeed having updated expenses or lowered income or a household size change. All that needs to be verified through documentation, and that can be done on MD Think, that can be done through a CBO, that can be done at your at the local OESS office as well. And we're hoping, we're having a chat with DHS later this week just to ensure and hope that to get caseworkers prepared for hopefully what's going to be a large influx of these, because change reports can be a bit of a tricky thing to navigate, and we want to make sure that the caseworkers are ready for, probably a large number of these coming in the next couple of months. Yeah, thank you, Allison. So the question about people who have turned 18, they can apply. There are some rules in regards to if they're living with a parent or guardian, they do have to apply with them. If they're applying on their own, they usually can, have their own application. But there's yes, students who live alone. There's other eligibility requirements for students that can be a little tricky to navigate, but often if they're over 18, meet other requirements and are living alone, they can be eligible. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump into touching briefly on some legislative stuff. So we are, the Maryland General Assembly for 2023 is about to open up. There's a couple of pieces of legislation I wanted to mention just to put on everyone's radar and just to let you all know that these are things that we as an organization are supporting. Would love to have you all, everyone's support here as well. First and foremost is an EBT reimbursement piece. So we all have known about the rise in EBT skimming over the past 2 years, and this is a piece of legislation that's going to help address that. While the federal legislation is going to start to create a reimbursement system, it is only for SNAP benefits, and it only goes back to October 1st of 2022. The state-specific legislation dates back to January 1st of 2020, covers SNAP and TC and cash assistance benefits, which is what makes it quite different from the federal legislation in that it actually goes back to a date and time where we know the skimming has kind of started to balloon, and also covers non-SNAP benefits as well, which actually really eclipses a lot of what has been stolen in SNAP and as far as total dollar amount. I don't know off the top of my head. So that's being introduced by Senator Kramer, Montgomery County, and oh shoot, we just had a conversation with the delegate. But yeah, so that's currently in drafting, as most of the legislation that's going to be put out this year is. But we're really looking forward to that piece because it's going to be really with the total goal of making families whole again, because we've had folks that have been stolen from multiple times over the course of the past 2 years, and ensuring that they get that money back is going to be really, really important. It's also great as a piece of legislation because it removes the requirement for a police report to be filed. We know that for whatever reason, many families maybe did not file a police report when they had their benefits stolen, and having that as a required part of getting them reimbursed, we did not find as equitable or acceptable. So this is going to remove that as a requirement. We're really looking forward to see where that legislation goes. The next piece is going to be on categorical eligibility, which is essentially a fancy way of saying if you're eligible for this program, you're automatically eligible for this other one. Right now, Maryland has in place what's called broad-based categorical eligibility for SNAP benefits, meaning if you're eligible for TANF, temporary assistance for needy families, it's a cash benefit program, you are automatically eligible for SNAP. No other requirement or test must be completed. This legislation from Delegate Charkoudian is going to basically add in energy assistance and Medicaid as a piece as well. For the Medicaid portion, it's based off of what I believe is called Fast Pass. It's Fast something. A couple of states use this to get children and families automatically enrolled in Medicaid if they're on school meals, if they're on SNAP, and this would bring that program to Maryland. It also involves the Office of Home Energy Programs to automatically make eligible anyone that's on SNAP. So instead of having to go through this rigmarole of multiple applications, and we know that there is a massive gap between SNAP participating households and energy assistance participating households, this hopefully decreases that gap and just gets more families into these programs just more or less through one application, and also really creates a bit more of an interdepartmental conversation with data sharing, data matching, and just reducing the amount of overhead caseworkers and applicants alike need to do when they're applying for these programs. That really, it ties well into a program we currently have in Maryland called Heat and Eat, which gives a boosted SNAP benefit to anyone that's on SNAP, on energy assistance, and pays utility through their rent. It's kind of convoluted, but it is effective. It's currently in place in Pennsylvania and a couple other states, and provides the usual additional $40 to $50 a month in SNAP benefits. So the timing of this with the categorical eligibility program and the losing of EAs really couldn't come at a better time. But yeah, really looking forward to that piece as well. That's about it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions folks may have, and we'll keep you all updated as far as other nutritional pieces are coming through the state legislature. But yeah, happy to take any questions.
JD, you're always so thorough. I'm not surprised there aren't a ton of follow-up questions.
I have a question.
Oh,
actually.
Michelle has, oh, I'm sorry. I see a hand and someone else is speaking. Sorry.
Riri.
Riri, hi Riri, how are you?
Hi, good. I have a question. Let me see. Is JD?
Yes.
Okay, so in reference to the EBT reimbursement system, so I mean, I work for the school system and we get like 1 million calls from families about the EBT, and we're so unclear as to whether exactly what to tell them. There's certain families that are saying, well, I know of someone that's getting it. I know, that they're still getting it. And from my understanding, that program is no longer for the EBT for the school if they were to get free lunch. Can you clarify that for us, please?
So you are talking about PEBT.
Yes.
Okay. So PEBT, I believe, and this is something I wish I conferred with my colleague on this previously, but I don't believe Maryland or really any state has put forward a plan for the 2022 to 2023 school year. I don't believe that is in place quite yet. So there is, as of this moment, no PEBT for fall or spring semester. Now, one of the things in regards to EAs and the federal omnibus package that passed a couple of weeks ago is creating a permanent summer EBT program. So similar to the one that families got last year for the summer, this is going to be made permanent starting this year. It's a reduced amount. It's $40 per child per month. And this, similar to PEBT, extends to all school-age children that are on farms or in a CEP school. Other guidelines for virtual academies still pending. And so that will remain in existence. It's not going to be called PEBT. It's going to be called summer EBT, to my knowledge. And like I said, that starts this summer and is going to be made permanent. And that was a win, so to speak, of the omnibus package that came out. But again, on the chopping block with SNAP emergency allotment. So a bit of a handoff, which not many of us are pleased with, but a permanent program like that extends to all children is really good to see.
Thank you so much.
Hi, JD. I think my question is a little bit about strategy for the legislative session. Do you anticipate, what do you anticipate needing, or what barriers or roadblocks do you anticipate encountering with some of these bills? And how can this network be helpful?
Yeah, great question. So the categorical eligibility bill, that one is going to be interesting to see what kind of pushback we get from the department as far as what can and cannot be done with the technology that's already in place. Part of the strategy with that is just kind of to encourage that more departments talking to each other is a good thing. And, depending again on what the department's response, whether that's OHEP or DHS or other groups, is going to be, we'll have to kind of wait and see what that looks like. There's not much room for other opposition to that, I would doubt, simply because this is just a matter of streamlining our government and our application process. The EBT skimming is likely going to get pushback from a couple of places. One, we don't fully grasp what the cost is going to be quite yet, so the fiscal note could balloon in a way that we haven't seen. Reports so far put what's been stolen, I think, near the millions, possibly in the millions as of the most recent counts. And on top of that, there's going to be pushback on the not requiring a police report, especially because the way the system could be set up is that it's a partnership between Department of Budget and Management, Office of the Inspector General, and DHS to kind of properly identify who's had their benefits stolen. And there may be some pushback in regards to exactly how that gets set up. So, what we could really use from you all is, if you're encountering families that are having their benefits stolen, get their story. It doesn't need to be accurate. It doesn't need to be identifiable. It does need to be accurate, but just in a way that you can have a more accurate count than what may be reported. Because like I said, folks that have had their benefits stolen, many of them may not have even come forward to a police department or even to DHS to report that. And we really want to make sure that we're getting stories about the numbers, about the frequency, and about who these families are behind the benefits being stolen.
Any other questions for JD? We covered a lot of ground, and I will definitely do my best to summarize the key points in our resource email that we send out tomorrow. So for the benefit of those who weren't able to join us or who just kind of need that all in front of them moving forward. So thank you so much, JD, for joining us today and sharing that as always. And we have just a few minutes before we wrap up. I will just share quickly that our next call is going to be on February 13th from our usual time, 1 to 2:30. And we are actually, our current plans for that call are to spend some time with Allison Schnitzer and Elizabeth Tuin and Sharon Strath of our food access team to talk a little bit more, about how we can all work together to meet the need in the county, as these emergency allotments go away. We know that, needs are not decreasing at this time. And so we're going to have a little more of a community conversation together then on that issue. And, like I said, what resources we can identify to best support the residents in the county during this transition time. If there are any members on the call who have any announcements that they'd like to share, events coming up that you'd like us to be aware of, feel free to unmute or share something in the chat, and we can share that out in our resources going out again tomorrow. And I will also say, I know we don't always get time to introduce ourselves because we are such a happily large group, but if there's anyone who has joined us either for the first time on this call or recently in the past few months, and you've just never had an opportunity to introduce yourself to the community, feel free to do that now. We'd love to learn about you. So.
Anne Marie, I just wanted to mention one thing. If any of your Montgomery County stakeholders have any partners in Prince George's County, today is the deadline for the cold storage trailer. So if you want to let your partners in Prince George's County know, that way they have an opportunity to get a free storage trailer. Prince George's County Food Equity Council is spearheading that. And so I think that'll be a great opportunity, especially for the Montgomery County partners who are close on the borderline to Prince George's County. That way they could partner together for cold storage.
Thank you, Carla, for that reminder. That's great. Anyone else? What a pleasantly paced and yet prompt phone call we had this month. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you to all of our speakers. It is great to see you all and look forward to connecting more with everyone this year. So have a great day. Thank you.
Layman for being on the call after lunch.